So you think it was 30 years ago that we met?
I believe it was about 30 years. I started talking with Cardwell, actually conversing with him via mail, and he later, a year later, introduced me to you.
We've collaborated on stuff before. In fact, one of the mouthpieces that I made was the M4, and you very much improved it with some changes to the acoustic balance, and we called it the M4G, the G standing for Gary, as in Gary Bast. But this one started interestingly because I had what I would say a very successful line of different mouthpieces for different kinds of players, symphonic, quintet, lead players, whatever. And I was working in the back one day, and I had this idea. I wonder if I changed these parameters in the mouthpiece, if it would be better. And the mouthpiece, immediately the range felt compressed to me as I was playing it, meaning that if this is normally low C and this is the high C, it felt like they went like this, and they were much closer together. I had made a mouthpiece before where the notes were super close together, and it was very easy to play, but it suffered from what I call the French horn effect. They were too close together, so you had to be too accurate. It got too treacherous to try to hit it. But this one seemed like really interesting. So I made one up in the rim size and stuff that Javier Gonzalez uses. And he came in one day and he played it, and he was shocked. I mean, he was overshooting notes like crazy because they were a lot closer. So it took him a few minutes and he figured it out, and the sound was incredible, which said to me, I think I've got the intonation on this mouthpiece even better. Better intonation, better you have the harmonic engagement, the sympathetic vibrations, the better overtones you get. Bigger sound, easier. So he was excited and he took it away to check it out and try it. So the next afternoon he called me and he said, yeah, I did Mike Barone's rehearsal this morning, which is one of the hardest big band books in Los Angeles. And he said, I can't use this mouthpiece on a big band. And I said, how come? He says, I can't play loud on it. I said, okay. He said, yeah, if I crescendo, the mouthpiece just stops. So I didn't know what that really meant, so I said, come on in. So Javier came in, and sure enough, he played a G on top of the staff. He crescendoed. Right after he got to about a mezzo forte or so, the pitch went up just a tiny bit, and the mouthpiece stopped. And so I said, okay, well, let me think about this. So I called you up.
And you sent me an audio file of what Javier was going through. And okay, I said I have to think about this because I did not have an immediate answer. I looked through a bunch of stuff on the mouthpiece study that I had done for you, which assesses the impact of different areas of the mouthpiece on the acoustic effects, and the answer wasn't there. Where I did end up was remembering an instrument I had played where it was very constrained, and this was part of what Javier was explaining. That he was experiencing.
Yeah, he was saying it felt like there were these walls that he just couldn't get past.
Walls. And actually, I had another version of the same mouthpiece, and I had felt very much the same thing. So this was okay. It's a constant, what can we do that will adjust that? And it's a question of, you talk about the French horn effect. That's where you're not selective enough. It's selectivity is the term for it. And one way to adjust that is by looking at damping. Damping affects the amount of selectivity you have, how tight things are, and it also adjusts bandwidth. So there are counterbalancing effects. So it was, okay, we must be out of balance on this thing.
Can we say that the damping can adjust how big the slots are?
Absolutely.
How big the targets are?
Absolutely. If the slots are too tiny, it's actually, you're very selective. You can broaden that, and you get, if you go too far, you end up with your French horn effect. So the balance is where we needed to be with that. So I made some suggestions to you in terms of what we might adjust and see what happened with it. So
yeah, and the first few times, kind of went in the right direction. Anyone who's met me and done mouthpiece or trumpet stuff with me knows I'm a direction guy. Is this headed in the right direction or the wrong direction? And these damping changes we effected on the mouthpiece, that's all we were looking at, made some improvement, but not enough. So it was back to the drawing board. And I don't know where it went from there. I'm a little bit...
Well, you take things in steps. Once again, not only just direction, it's like how much. So you take a small step, maybe, oh, it's improved, so we took a bigger step. That's where we went with it.
Right, and we were also sitting at that time, so there are different ratios in a mouthpiece. And when we talk about that, Gary and I are talking about acoustic ratios. We're not talking about physically measuring the overall length of the mouthpiece with a ruler and comparing that ratio to the diameter of the, the exit of the mouthpiece, something like that. That doesn't... That's important if you're machining something, but it's not really important acoustically. We have to look at how the mouthpiece behaves acoustically and how it behaves with the trumpet, because that's how we play it. And so we had decided upon a couple ratios that were very important. There's a number of different ratios in the mouthpiece, and a lot of this came from Cardwell's work. And
yes.
Gary's able to do acoustic tests because he has a working salpingometer, and we'll put some stuff in the notes, links to see some of this stuff for you. We had made a decision that this one ratio in particular, which I'm not going to say what it is because it's a secret, was very important. And we had to hit a certain number to get the intonation of the mouthpiece correct.
Absolutely.
So we also, along with thinking about damping, Gary was looking at, well, where's our ratio at? So he started doing these tests to figure out, and we found that on the mouthpieces, that the one I had made for him and the one I made for Javier, the ratio was correct, really correct. And so then it became to the damping thing. And, okay, how can we adjust the damping? So we tried this, we tried that, and then we hit on something for you, the mouthpiece I made you, right?
Yeah, that's actually my lead mouthpiece that I play, and it was dramatic. It was a wow for me.
What was dramatic about it?
What dramatic was the amount of sound you get for effort. It was much easier to play, and I mean I had been playing the M4G for over a decade, and that had been very satisfactory for me. But more sound, broader sound. Just satisfactory for less effort. And the same for my concert band mouthpiece. It was very similar to what Javier is playing. And that, I started getting people sitting with me in whatever ensembles I was playing in were like, wow, it was dramatic and very positive feedback. So I said...
You didn't tell them you were playing a new mouthpiece.
No, so we're on the right track. So that was a clue there.
Javier wasn't still right. And even though we made these damping mods, he still wasn't enamored with it. So I finally said to Gary, I said, I'm just going to make this mouthpiece the way I would make it normally and incorporate the damping aspects that we had come up with. And that's the one that kicked in for Javier.
Right.
This was a few weeks before the ITG conference.
Yeah.
I had also made one for William, who works with me, and there were dramatic effects for him. He was liking it. But if you're going to have a good mouthpiece line or a good mouthpiece series, you got to have something that's going to work for the guys that play really tiny commercial mouthpieces, all the way through the guys that play really large orchestral mouthpieces. So I went back to Gary for some more number crunching.
Now, we also had to account for how much lip penetration. You had to bracket that because some folks play very tight and very little lip penetration, and others play much looser and have more lip penetration. So I did a bunch of, I did dozens of salpingometer runs on mouthpieces and with bracketing, and figured out where the ratios were and suggested which way we could go so we could hit the bulk of players, that it will work for them. And I think we're fairly successful at that. I mean, here at ITG, we've had players who have relatively small mouthpieces and getting tremendous results out of it, and people playing larger mouthpieces that are also getting good results. So I'm happy where we are.
And they're having the aha. I mean, in the marketing for this, the tagline I put was, these are different. Because after I had let Javier and Gary and William be the crash test dummies on this, and they were having success. I said, okay, I'm going to make one for myself. Let them check it out first. Anyway, I made one for myself, and I'm playing a little band of mine that we're putting together, and I started to experience what were like magical effects, like you were hearing in concert band.
Well, not just concert band. Actually, in the big band that I play in, two of the players that sit next to me are saying, hey, what is this? And actually, they were hoping I could bring mouthpieces home for them from ITG, and we don't have the quantity yet. So they're going to have to wait, but they basically pre-ordered. They say they want it.
What we both learned from our friendship and studies with Bill Cardwell is probably the most important thing about a good trumpet and or a good mouthpiece, and the two together, is getting the relative intonation as good as possible. Yes. Preferably within the level of human discrimination, which is about plus or minus 5 cents, but if you're even somewhere, the better you can get the intonation, the better off you are. And if you remember, that's where the mouthpiece started. The intonation was incredible, but you couldn't play it because it didn't have enough damping.
But it was a great starting place.
But it was a great starting place. So then, if you take it from there
and adjust the damping, you get several effects. You're adjusting your flexibility, quickness of response, and also the bandwidth of your peaks, your resonances, and that increased bandwidth gets you more harmonic engagement, more sound, which is for less effort.
Is that because, so if this is your peak and it's really tight, this is giving you the harmonic engagement. And if it gets broader, you've got more frequencies across there giving you more harmonic engagement?
Yes, that's accurate.
Simple way to look at it.
Yeah.
So the bigger the target, the more harmonic engagement, the bigger the sound, free gas from Mother Nature, the easier to play. If they get too big,
right,
then that slot, the slot of the C, let's say, gets too close to the slot of the D, and you can't discriminate between the two.
Too broad, yeah. So it's a balance. It's always a balance.
In future stages, there will be different cup shapes because of the lip penetration aspect of it. That helps us find the mouthpiece that works the best for you, the player,
a given player.
Right, because that's the final thing we can't control, is how far are they pushing their lip into the cup, which is affecting the resonance frequency of the mouthpiece, and that affects all these other things.
All the ratios.
Because it throws the ratios off.
Yes.
It either corrects them or throws them off.
From my standpoint, one of the reasons I do this work with KO, with you, is because when we hand something to an accomplished player and they play it and they go, wow. I mean, that to me is the greatest thrill, and it's happened a number of times while I've been working with you. And it's payback for me. It's what it's all about. We're making things better for folks.